Okay, for all you Mopar fans, what we've got here is a Carter 6903. Fits the big blocks. And according to Carter, they say that this pump should put out 6 to 7.5 pounds of fuel pressure. What people are experiencing is better than 8 pounds of pressure. And going through the Carter book, there is a super street pump that puts out 8 to 9.5 pounds of pressure. So I have a feeling that in the factory, when they were assembling these 6903s, they put the wrong spring in it, and you end up with a higher pressure. I see a lot of guys on the Mopar boards complaining that their 6903 pumps put out too much pressure. So I happened to get one in here, brand new. In fact, it was still in the Carter box, and I took it apart to check things out, to see if I could knock the spring pressure down. And this is the diaphragm that comes from the factory with this super heavy spring in it. And I noticed a couple of problems in the process of doing this particular pump. If you look at the holes, see how they're oblong, all stretched out, especially that one. Well, this all has to do with the assembly at the factory, and in my opinion, they put the wrong diaphragm in it. This diaphragm should have been bigger. Here's one of ours, and the diaphragm cloth is about a half a hole larger on the diameter, outside diameter. When you preload one of these pumps, one of these diaphragms, you pull that diaphragm down inside the pump like that, and it shrinks the whole diameter so that the screws line up. Put the screws in, tighten them down while this is still down here, and then release it. And it kind of folds the diaphragm like that, like it's supposed to. What they did with this is they never preloaded it. Put the diaphragm in, tighten the screws down, and as soon as it went to do its stroke, it stretched out the holes. And when they drive the screws through it, it actually makes a new hole. So this diaphragm was destined to fail because it ends up stretching all in through here. You can't see this right now because this is a brand new diaphragm right from the factory, out of a brand new pump, still in the box. It would have failed right in through here. As you can see, it's a little discolored all in through this. That's where the diaphragm is stretching. This one won't do that. It's a lighter spring, something that brings you down into the 5.5 to 6 pounds of pressure, like it's supposed to do. Their seal setup sits in there's a little ledge that this sits on, and that seals in there. And because we can't copy their design, we designed this. This will seal in the same spot. and it will do the exact same thing. This is our design pull rod. We bend the plates. We have these diaphragms made. We make the washer. We make the seals. We make the retainer. In the good old USA. So we're going to get going, and we're going to go through this, and I'll freshen this one up. Put it back to the way it's supposed to be. If I'm not mistaken, the customer mentioned that this only puts out 1 pound of pressure. So I have a feeling we have a diaphragm problem. Yeah, it's hardly pushing out any pressure at all. So we'll find out what's wrong with it, and I'll show you. After marking the location of the casting, this body casting, fuel casting to the body, we want to get it so that it ends up in the same spot. After these, we have to take out all these screws. The one that's the biggest pain in the neck, I've already started. This one here, because you can't get straight on because of the inlet fitting. But remove all these screws. After you get all the screws removed, this is where your valves are. We have an inlet and the outlet. Actually, this is the outlet, and these two are the inlet. Fuel's got to come in here and be pushed out here to come out this. Remove these 2 screws, and you'll separate the what's called a pulsator casting. This is a pulsator diaphragm. A lot of times you'll find a piece of foam up in here. Just throw it away. You're not going to use it again. Now this is where you want to knock out the valves. To the center, get an 1/8 inch punch, and very lightly tap that. Tap that section, that piece right in the center, and it will eventually work its way out. It doesn't take much to knock them out of there. Now this is where the problem was with this particular pump. Why it wasn't putting out enough pressure. This valve here was stuck. As you can see it. It won't move past that spot. But once the fuel comes in and pushes it, it sticks up in that spot, and then it won't return. It has to seal in order for the fuel to move. This is ready for the bead blaster. We'll clean it all up. This is the seat that the valve sits in, and they sit in there. Next order of business is removing this spring. Be careful, it's pretty strong. Its sole purpose is to keep the arm in contact with the rod or the cam. It does nothing for pressure. The pressure is all regulated by the spring inside of here. Now there's a soft plug that sits on this. Knock the casting off it. Put a nice sharp chisel between it and the casting, and just keep hitting it. Go back and forth, side to side. Just keep doing it. It'll eventually work it up and you can just take it out. Another thing that Carter did was they put a dab of Loctite in here. I have no idea why. But in order to get this pin out, which you have to get out in order to pull the arm out to get the diaphragm out. What I've done is I've got an oversized drill bit that I run down in there, and it cleans out all that crap that's in there and allows the pin to slide up and fall on the floor like that. Put some pressure on the diaphragm spring and slide the arm out. If you don't, it won't come out. There's another one of those killer springs, and check out the holes. All elongated. It weakens the diaphragm down in here if the diaphragm isn't preloaded correctly like this one was. Or this one wasn't, I should say. And it ends up splitting, and then you get a leak. We don't like a leak, especially a fuel leak. When that diaphragm fails and fuel goes in here, it goes in two places. First it goes down into your oil pan. It also comes up through this vent hole. You can see the hole in here. It sends fuel there and comes splashing out all over your engine. Nice and hot. Now all this stuff is going to go into the glass feeder to be cleaned up, and then it'll be clear coated and reassembled. We'll be back. Okay, all the parts have been bead blasted, all cleaned up, and clear coated. One of the important things is making sure that this surface and this surface, anywhere that the two pieces are going to come together, you're going to make sure that they're flat. Anywhere there's got to be a seal. Now this piece here, I don't know if you can see it in the video or not. I started surfacing this, and this piece here, all across the middle, didn't touch. Now, that's important because you don't want the fuel to be going back and forth through here. And there's a pretty decent gap there. Now the diaphragm, the pulsator diaphragm that fits in there, it's pretty forgiving. It's pretty thick. But still, I'm not comfortable with it. And I'm going to keep surfacing this on the belt sander until this comes clean. I want this to be the same height as that, so I can get a perfect seal across it. That's what I want. Nice and flat. Nothing. Everything is hitting at the same time. That'll make a perfect seal. This way you won't get any leakage. No fuel will leak out in these areas. This is the pulsator diaphragm that goes in there. Okay, let's install the valves. Make sure that this area is clean, anywhere that the valves are going to sit. We want them to seal right. This is one of our valves. When you get it, you get a rivet, you get a conical spring, and you get the valve plate. Now, this is going to open up all that much. which means it's going to flow a lot more. How much more, I don't know. I never checked it. I don't have a machine that'll give me gallons per hour. I'd have to depend on somebody out in the field to do that kind of measurement. I'll put the valve in, just get it stuck in the hole. It won't push right through, so get it stuck, keep it straight up, and just a constant tapping to knock it in. You want it to come through the other side, about 1/16 of an inch. The other valves, sometimes they don't stand up, and sometimes the valves go in real easy. If they just slide in, which I've run into it many times, if they just go in and they won't stick, take a nut. I think this is a 1/4 inch. Set it down. Set the head of the rivet right on top of that, and get a screwdriver, or I have a punch that's real kind of dull, and I just set it in the center. One hit, just enough to mushroom that out a little bit, and it'll stay in. That's if you have a problem with it, not with the rivet sliding all the way through. Put in the other valve. Again, you only want it to come through about a 1/16, 1/8 of an inch, somewhere in that area. Pulsated diaphragm. We want it to block that up, because we want the fuel to come up through, hit this, and be forced out through the outlet. Find your indexing marks before you put this on. There's one of mine right here. The other one is right there. And install these 2 screws. Now this is one of those deals where just bring one of them down till it just touches, then get the other one and give it a good twist. You should be able to blow air in and not pull the air back out, suck air out, not blow it back in. That's the sound of valve seating. They're seated good, no leaks in that area. Now we can put the diaphragm on. Diaphragm assembly. Set it down inside. Push it down so that the head of that pull rod comes through, and then you can hook it onto this. New pin. Push it all the way down. The soft plug. A couple of whacks. Put the spring on. Careful it doesn't jump away on you, because it'll take off. Would this have something to do with the amount of wear that you're getting on your on the rod that drives it? Possible. They make lighter springs. I just don't have a definite answer as to if that's the problem or not, but this does have It does have to do with, this spring has to do with keeping this arm in contact with that. If it's too much pressure on it, then it's going to wear it. As long as it's made out of the right material, you shouldn't have a problem. Now these 6903 pumps have 80 billion holes all drilled around. Not all of them are threaded though. This one here is threaded, the next one isn't. If you need your pump turned, if you need that inlet or outlet to clear something, a frame rail or anything, whatever, something might be in the way and you need it to go here, you're going to have to tap those holes. This part is, you really got to pay attention on this, because these holes are a little bit wider than the original ones. They're a little bit wider than this bolt circle. So you have to do a something that you have to do that people at factory should have done, which is why you see the original diaphragms with the oblong holes. Get one cut. I should do the other side first. Easier for you to see. Put one of the screws in and get it caught through the hole in the diaphragm. And the hole in the casting that it's going to screw into. Now the one on the other side, you can see that if this goes through, this will show you what the problem is with the carder is having at the factory. Got to zoom in on it. See how that misses it? It misses the hole in the diaphragm. Well, what they're doing is they're just lining this up and driving the screws through. In order for that to come in, what we have to do first is I take a small screwdriver. What I suggest you use is a popsicle stick. You want to push this diaphragm in so that the screw goes through the hole, not beside it. You have to do that with all of these. It's just something that you have to do. If you want it done right, you have to do it this way. I've done this enough times so that I know enough not to puncture the diaphragm. If you use a little screwdriver, just be careful. Anyway, do that all the way around. You might not have to do it to every one of them, but I would say most of them. Don't drive the screw through the rubber. You want it to go through the hole, and make sure that it goes in the hole and it's not missing it. The only thing you don't want to happen is, you can see that the diaphragm is doing this. What you don't want is, you don't want the diaphragm to fold over itself. It shouldn't do that. If you're doing it right, it shouldn't do that. The diaphragm isn't that big. Okay, another important thing, and this is where I think Carter fell down on. You want to put an adjustable wrench or something on this arm to give you some leverage, and pull it up. Pull the arm up so that it pulls the diaphragm down inside. This is what's known as preloading the diaphragm. It keeps the diaphragm from getting stretched out and wearing out prematurely. While it's in that position, tighten down at least 4 of the screws across from each other, keeping an eye on this edge to make sure that the diaphragm doesn't fold on itself. Once those 4 screws are down, you can release the pressure off the arm and tighten down the rest of them. After you get the rest of them tightened down, make one more trip around just to make sure you didn't miss one or anything. Once they're all tight, put your thing back on your arm again, and in a relaxed position, put your thumb over the inlet and try to pull it up. And you'll feel your thumb trying to get sucked inside. That'll tell you that this outlet valve is sealed. There's no leaks around here, and there's no leaks around here. Now we want to do that with the outlet, but we want to start with it up, down inside. Now block it off and let it go, and you'll feel pressure on the outlet. That also will tell you that there's no problems here. The plates are sealed, up here is sealed. Now if you wanted to check the oil seal, it's kind of difficult to do, but you got to block these 2 and that single hole off. And work that arm again. You'll feel it. It's right to pull your fingers in. Same thing with it being up. That'll tell you you're not going to get any oil leaks. And for all intents and purposes, this pump is done, ready to go back to the customer so that he can go cruising. Any problems, just refer back to this, any part in this video, or send me an email, put something in the comment section down below. Subscribe. I do a lot of these pumps, not this particular one, but I've got about 30 other videos that are up there and showing how to rebuild these pumps the correct way. It's not the only way to do it, it's the way that I do it. I have good results. Very little, if any, come back, and if they do, it's usually not my problem. A piece of dirt gets stuck in here, holds the valve open. Now, putting your fittings in, don't use Teflon tape. If you have any of the Teflon paste, use it. It doesn't, the Teflon tape tends to shred, and and pieces go inside the pump, and they get stuck in there and stick the valves open. Use the Teflon paste. It's very forgiving and it seals good. And put a little sealer on the gasket. You don't have to, but you can. And if you want to get in touch with me, we're on the web at then-now.com. Phone number is 781-335-8860, or like I said, leave a message down below. Thanks for watching. I hope it helps.